And we are live for another book and a beverage with the one, the only, the most interesting indie author I've ever met, Palmer Pickering. But we're trying something new here. So, Ro, tell us what's
Yeah.
going on in the world of Ro for
Well,
about
first
a
of
minute.
all, anybody who's with us tonight, I mean, you had a choice between this and the presidential debates, and so thank you for choosing wisely, because you will see that forever for the next 2 months. So, yay. And I did want to say that I saw something tonight that I'd never seen before, and I thought it sounded really, really gross, but I said this would be good for the show tonight because it is book and a beverage. So I saw this, and if you can't see it, it's Oreo Coke Zero. And my very first thought was, that sounds disgusting. And let me tell you, it really, really is. It's exactly what you think it would taste like. I mean, you can smell Oreo, right? So it's got that going for it. But then yes, Andrew, gross. It's absolutely freaking nasty. It's like drinking an Oreo, and it's just not good. So I have saved you all from that problem. You're welcome.
Okay, and from my end, I have nothing interesting to tell people, so I will just use my time to tell everyone that Haley Reese Chow will be our next guest, and she will be on Thursday at 7 p.m. And as always, we have done zero research. I know she has a book. I do not know what that book is because it's not Thursday yet. We really do not do any advanced planning, in case you were surprised by that. But now, Palmer, we're going to start with a speed round.
Okay.
Can you
We have a speed round? When did that happen?
can just yes or
Nobody
no,
tells me anything, man.
yes or no if these are true? You got a degree with a concentration in religion and race relations.
Yes.
You work in Silicon Valley, high tech, and in gaming.
Yes.
You got a certificate in Chinese acupressure.
Yes.
You're a certified solar panel installer, or at least you were
Correct.
certified.
Correct.
You've studied with the 14th Dalai Lama.
I did.
I don't know my Dalai Lamas that well. Is that the current Dalai Lama?
Yeah,
Okay. And you live in a redwood forest.
I do.
You have 4 books published, and they are all very consistent. You have 2 sci fantasy, you have 1 780-page standalone epic fantasy, and you have 1 cozy lit RPG.
Yep.
So
You got
when
it.
I say that you're the most interesting indie author that we know, I am not lying.
Well, yeah,
So,
what are you doing talking to us?
yeah,
That
welcome
that's
to the
the
show.
that's the big question here.
Oh, now, guys, come on. I'm old. I've done a lot. I've had time. I've had time.
Yeah, but we're old and we
What have you been doing with your lives, man?
exactly, right?
And Andrew, the best opening to a book ever, Heliotrope. I've read
Oh,
Dark Town of yours, of very good book. It's the only one of yours I've read so far, but now I have to read the rest because there's so much overlap there between sci fantasy and epic.
You,
And
but
you're even going to read the 700 pager, Mike?
they're all vastly different. They're
I know.
vastly different. Darktown is very, very different from Heliotrope, and people are like, "Wow, I'm really surprised at the difference in the voice." Wouldn't you agree, Andrew? Yeah, Heliotrope is more serious. Oh, yeah, I played for hockey in Russia. Oh yeah, and I wrote songs in Nashville. Um, but the Star Children saga is dark, like it's brutal. It's got trigger warning content. It's like nothing like Darktown, which is fun, happy, kids could read it. Darktown. I mean, Star Children saga. No, it's like I won't like when I sell books at like cons and stuff or fairs.
Mhm.
I won't let parents buy them for their teenagers. I'm like, no. They're like, oh, come on. They're like, oh, they watch movies. I'm like, no. I say you read it and then you decide, because I wouldn't want to read that when I was 15. I'd be traumatized. Anyway, so be prepared if you go down that route of Star Children saga. And book 2 of that is also around 782 pages. Another Heliotrope chonker. I know because I wrote it and I published it, but KDP has like a limit for their cream colored paper of like 760 pages or something. So I'm like, what? So, but I like to have like a decently readable font, even though Light Fighters is kind of smaller font because it would have been even longer. But Ingram, you can go up to like 830 pages in cream color paper. Anyway, I'm digressing. Back to you.
So
You've never watched this show before. Digression is what we do.
Oh, okay, good.
I didn't know that there was a limit on cream colored paper. I didn't know there was like a ceiling for that.
There is. Can you believe it? I'm pissed.
But you can get it in white as much as you want?
Not as much as you want. KDP limits it to like 8 something, but Ingram you can go as high as like 1,050, I think. And then you're on your own. You have to basically, like, I don't know how Ryan Cahill did his Beast. I always forget the name of the really fat one, but I get them mixed up. But you have to go to a printer yourself. You can't do print on demand at that size anymore.
Huh.
So, I mean, they have a hard time with the bindings. They're using these anyway.
So before we came on air, I asked you lots of great questions, and you told me, why don't we talk about this live? So now we're going to do that. Tell us about WorldCon and how you got to be the apprentice free librarian, because of course you did. Yeah,
Andrew, he's going to ask me about book 3 next because we talked about that also. I'm seeing you're asking about that. How did I get to be the apprentice librarian? So I am going to try to act like I hadn't said this exact same thing to Mike and Ro. So I discovered a while ago. So I've been going to cons, to fantasy and science fiction cons for like 15, 20 years. And I discovered that if I give my books away there, they get traction because it's a completely targeted audience, because it's this like assemblage of people on the World Cons. It's like Glasgow's like 6,000 people. The local cons are smaller, but it's all your target audience. It's all total geeky, avid speculative fiction readers who read tons of books and have a lot of opinions, and are like interesting, complicated books. They're our target reader, and it's hard to find those people because they're scattered throughout our country. Like, not everybody reads. Like, out of my friends, like, I don't know, maybe 5-10% like read, like on any regular basis. And of those, how many read speculative fiction? Like, it's the rare geek who does, right? Or a cool person who does. So here you got all these people who are your target audience. So I don't know how to reach these people. Like, they live in, some other state or whatever. They're not in our little Twitter spiffbo indie community. So you can sell at those cons, but normally the indie tables get completely ignored. I've spent decades walking by books of indie books and sort of like not even stopping, and watching all these authors sitting behind there, like hopefully waiting for someone to stop, and nobody does. Like, yeah, that's me. Yeah. So what I do, I came up with this double punch. What I would do is I would make an ad, like if whatever I can afford, as much as I can afford, in the programming guide of my book, hopefully like a full page ad or even a spread of my books. And then I put them out at the tables, and then people stop because they're like, oh, their mind remembers seeing that somewhere. They're not sure where, but it looks familiar. And then they stop and they look, and then they start looking at all the other books on the table. So that works. But anyway, so back around to your question about the apprentice. So I would give, a lot of the smaller cons give away book bags. That is, every attendee gets a bag full of books. And usually they're filled with trad published books, usually like new releases or their backstock stuff they're trying to get rid of, or samplers. That's how I got like Way of Kings. I got the first hardback of Way of Kings. I don't even know I knew who Brandon Sanderson was because I'm a huge Robert Jordan Wheel of Time fan. So I'm like, oh, this talk about chunker row. Like, come on, dudes, like Way of Kings. He's got me beat. So I found it, and that was years ago. I found it in like a back, I stack my books. I have like double on my shelves. I always have like double because I have more books than shelves. So I found Way of Kings like a year ago. I was like, oh, I have this book. Cool. I should read it. So then I started calling cons. I'm like, hey, can I send some books for your book bags? They're like, okay, sure. So I did the same thing for Glasgow. I called them up. I said, yo, can I send some books for your book bags? I said, we're not doing book bags. We're doing this freebie thing. I'll get you in touch with the freebie librarian. And whose name is Ollie, and he's a super sweet guy. And he's got his first debut book in Alpha Read right now, I think. Anyway, he's from England. Anyway, Oliver RDT, totally interesting guy. He spent years, I'm digressing because you guys love digressing, I guess. He spent years doing world building, and I'm talking like he showed me all the maps he's drawn, like really detailed. He's written languages. He's written like a dozen languages. I emailed him the other day. He's like, oh, I wrote another language. And I'm just like, what? And he shows me all the lexicons about I'm like, do you have like grammar and vocabulary? He's like, oh, yes. And he whips it out. And he's like, do you have an alphabet? He's like, yeah. And there's all this swirly, weird stuff with dots. And I'm like, oh my God, you're amazing. So anyway, he's finally putting out a book. So Ollie's like, I don't know. So anyway, so he said, yeah, you can send me some books. So then I said, oh, and I forgot to tell you guys in my lead up to this, that I got really bored at cons because, for 10 years, how many world building panels do you really want to listen to, or like how to take myths and turn them into fiction, like it's the same panels over and over and over again. So I got bored at cons. And so I just started volunteering. So I'd always volunteer at the art show because I love art, fantasy art, which is totally dangerous because I end up buying, because I'm sitting looking at all the art for like 48 hours. And then I end up buying all the art. So this year I'm like, I'm not going to volunteer at the art show, but hey, Ollie, do you need help at the freebies library? He's like, I don't know. Later, he's like, yeah, actually, I probably could use help because I'm going to want to go to panels and stuff. It was only his second or third con in his life or something. I was like, you go do you, I'll watch the freebie library. And then he was like, but I'm a little worried because the trad publishers haven't been coming through. Like nobody's sending us books. He's like, I was like, really? Did they they don't want to? He's like, I don't know. Like maybe nobody asked them. Maybe the publisher liaison person didn't ask because we just thought they'd come to us. And and they ended up the only trad publishers who sent books were Del Rey and Head of Zeus. And actually the Tenlo publisher that I'm reading right now, Titan. I got this at the freebie library. So anyway, so I said, well, I know I have a big network of indie authors. You want me to ask if anybody else wants to send their books? He's like, yeah, that'd be amazing. And then his boss, the volunteer coordinator, she's like, oh, I love indie. Yeah, get as many as you can. And then they're like, Barbara, do you want to help? Or Palmer, everyone calls me Palmer. My real name is Barbara. My real name is Barbara Palmer Pickering. People always want to know. Palmer is my middle name. Okay. So I just dropped the Barbara because I never liked it. And everyone used to call me Palmer in like elementary school, and all my friends said, Palmer. So I just want Palmer Pickering. Anyway, so they're like, Palmer, we want you to volunteer. So I went through the whole volunteer sign-up process, and I was telling Andrew Wizardly Reads about this. So then I became involved. So then I started coordinating all the, getting in all the logistics of getting everyone to send me all their books, which you've been through, Mike, when you did your collection, yeah. Right? You get a lot of books. You have to figure out like who's sending what and did they arrive and all that stuff. And we ended up getting 60 authors shipping us books in advance, people from all over the world. They would do like the print on demand locally in the UK. So, as cheap as it is to buy it to print them in your own country, no international shipping. So we got 60 authors, and then, so about 400 books, and then a couple hundred more books were dropped off in person. So people who were coming, they're like, a lot of them were like, I'll just drop them off in person. So that's cool. So we had like maybe 600 indie books there. And I'm telling you, it was like one of the most popular places in the con. I mean, all right, there were more popular things, but it was pretty popular because there was a little buzz going around it. Like, oh, did you check out the freebie library? And people were like, oh, there's a lot of indie books at the freebie library. And people actually came up to me like, saying how they were so happy to have these indie books because they wouldn't know where to find them otherwise. They don't know what the indie books are, what the good indie books are. And so it was just wildly popular. The books like flew off the shelves, and I just kind of sat in that space the whole time. We had some tables and chairs and stuff. And basically a lot of people came through. So I got, I met Patrick and Made Between the Pages, and Paul P.L. Stewart and Johann Viking Library of a Viking, and Jonathan P., the mystery man who does all the memes. He's a really nice guy. He exists actually, because he was always incognito. I was posted pictures like, oh, he has a body, Anyway, and I signed my books. I gave away a lot of books, and I'm already getting I'm already seeing reviews on Goodreads for my books. Oh, I picked this up at Worldcon just on a lark, but I'm glad I did because it was, So anyway, that's the long version of the story.
Or Palmer, for people, and there's some folks here in the chat who have never been to an author con like that, especially something like Worldcon. And I know we've talked about 2025 in Seattle a bit here. What can people expect to spend their time doing at a giant event like Worldcon, other than picking up some free books in the book library?
Well, lots of things. I started attending because I was pitching my book for trad publishers, and I was trying to find agents and network, right? So I would stalk agents and publishers, and it was really kind of weird, and try to talk to them. And what's interesting is the party scene. So at Glasgow, come to find out, UK has a law that you can't have parties in hotel rooms. So all the parties were on the convention floor, the cement floor with the huge ceilings and little tents. Some of them had them in bars, at invite only. But in most cons, like in the United States, there's a thing they call the party floor. And so it's all these huge suites on an entire floor of a Hilton or something. And they're all parties. And they're the publishers' parties and different cons, organized parties, and different people. We could have an indie party, or bringing kegs of beer, and somebody of course would have to pay to rent the suite and coordinate all that. But we theoretically could do that. And so you just go party hopping, and people are costumed, and people are getting drunk, and it's everybody mixing together, all the agents, all the publishers, all the authors, all the readers, all the fans, all the bloggers. Everyone's stumbling down halls, half drunk, going to the next party. It's a blast.
Drunk people in Scotland? No, yeah. It ain't so.
Well, in Scotland, it wasn't like that. It sucked. They didn't have that. In the US, it's like that. In the UK, it's against the law. So it was just invite only little parties in these weird tents. And I didn't even go to any. So cool people like Crystal Matar, for example, and other people got invited to Nicholas Ames flat, I guess. I'm like, how did you get that invite? So there were these parties going on that their tour was an invite only party that, the cool kids went to, and not me, No, I'm not bitter. I had my party at the Freebies Library. It's okay. So if you go to Seattle or LA, you got the parties, okay? And if you're trying to pitch your book, you can make connections. And they have things called agent walks, where you can sign up to stroll down the sidewalk of Seattle and look at the sites and chat to agents, which I've done. You can do roundtables with authors. I went to FantasyCon, which is a very small one, which is typically only industry folks. It's open to everybody, but it's not a fan con. You don't get a lot of readers there, but you get the industry people. So I went to one in Bristol, UK, and roundtable with Robin Hobb, just sit in a little hotel conference room, cozy because it's England, not like in the United States, nice wood furniture, and, feeling like you're in the olden times, with Robin Hobb sitting around chatting, how did you break through in your market, in the book marketing? And she's like, oh, you have to write a ton. You have to put out tons of books. She had all these books under other pseudonyms before she started the Elderlings. And by that, so she had several books under her belt of different names. And she's like, typically for mid-list authors, unless you're the breakthrough, J.K. Rowling or whatever, most people, it takes 10 years to actually get enough fans to actually see sales of any significance, and to even get high triple digit book contracts or whatever, over $1 million book contracts. You just don't get those unless you can sell a lot, prove that you can sell a lot. She finally did after like 40 years. She finally got like $1 million contract for a trilogy. I read this was like 3 years ago, but it takes a long time. You need to build up slowly. Cause remember, we're this small, geeky, like small percentage of the population, right? It's not like we're, Marvel Comics, right? Or Disney, right? We're just, so anyway, so that was kind of encouraging. So you can go to it got Glasgow. They had lots of authors who had these roundtables. You can go to panels. There's all these panels you go to. You can get on a panel. You can apply now to Seattle. I think it's still open to say, hey, I want to be on a panel. Here's kind of my interest. Here's what I can talk about. It's hard to get on as an indie author, and the World Cons are still very trad publishing focused. It looks like Dragon Con is way more open. I see all these indie authors are on all these panels. So and they have like 35,000 people attending a Dragon Con, which is like a Comic-Con type environment, as opposed to these little fantasy fiction reader cons, right? Which are like the big one was 6,000. Probably in the United States, it'll probably be like maybe 8 or 10,000. So, but in the UK, you got a lot of people from different countries in Europe. And so you can go to panels, you can try to get on panels. Like I said, it's kind of hard. Like in WorldCon, in Glasgow, there's almost no indie representation at panels. There were maybe 3 or 4, like Ryan Cahill was on an indie panel. A couple other people got on some other lit RPG panel. Somebody got on, but it's very sparsely represented. That's why I'm trying to get the freebies library was a great way to get indies like out there, even in the conversation. And I'm talking to the organizers for Seattle. Hey, Steve, nice. For Seattle and LA about doing the same thing. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but I'm talking about it to do the same freebies library thingy.
So, a quick question. You said Seattle and LA. Is there an event in LA?
Seattle is 2025. LA is 2026. So WorldCon travels around the world. It's in a different place every year. It's sort of like the Olympics. You have to bid on it. You have to show why your city would be great to host it, and if your finances are in order, and if you are experienced running a convention, and if you can handle it. And then the members, anyone who's bought a ticket or attended a con is a member. You can vote on where you want it to be. Like it was in China last year. Yeah. And so it just so happened that 2 years in a row it's going to be in the United States. And 2020, I can't remember where it is after. I think it's going to be in Ireland, in Dublin, Ireland, 2029. I don't know where it's going to be 27 and 28. So yeah, 2 years in a row on the West Coast. And then there's a huge dealer's room with a bunch of booksellers and jewelry and an art show and some events at night, like they'll air movies, or they'll have like comic costume competitions, or have music and stuff like that. So it's pretty much, it's an all, you can get a break on hotel rooms with a membership. If you sign up early enough, they get these blocks of hotel rooms which are at a cut rate. So it's a bunch of introverts getting together and staring at each other awkwardly. It's fun.
Like a 6th grade dance. Pretty much.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you're going to the next 2 WorldCons then, since they're out in the West Coast.
Yeah, I bought my my membership, which is like $200 for Seattle already. And I guess I didn't reserve hotel rooms yet because the block isn't open. I always also get burnt out though after cons. I'm like, I'm sick of cons. I'm not going again. And then I end up going. I'm going to go to LostCon in LA, which is a small regional convention over the Thanksgiving weekend this year. So I don't know. You need to try one. It looks really amazing when you see everyone posting on Twitter. It's a little bit of a mixed bag. It's a little bit of, what am I doing here? Like, who do I know? Like, all these people, seem like they're having fun, but I feel awkward. Maybe I'm just telling you my internal dialogue. So, but it can be really fun. And the panels are interesting. If you've never done that, it's interesting. If you've been doing it for 10, 15 years, it's like yawner.
Sounds like a really good way to feed the imposter syndrome.
Oh my God. So I'm going to tell a story that I tell all the time. It's one of my favorite stories. So like I said, these WorldCons are pretty much trad focused. That's where the Hugo Awards are given out. Okay. And the members, remember I said anyone who buys a ticket or who attended a con as a member gets to vote on the books and the Hugos, who wins the books. Like you get to nominate. I think you need a certain number to nominate, sort of like getting a bill in your, up for election, in an election to get a not a bill, whatever, citizen things, whatever they're called. You need to get a certain amount of people. So you need to, I think a certain amount of people need to nominate a book, and then they get nominated, and then everybody reads all the books, which I never do that. And then they vote, and I don't vote because I don't read all the books. But it's a big deal. You always get like the famous people, John Scalzi's probably won 20 Hugos. I don't know. And George R. R. Martin, there's a whole drama around George R. R. Martin. I'll tell you about that in a sec. Anyways, it's very trad focused. So anyway, I was at this, I think it was a smaller one. I think it was the Nebula Cons, which is a very small version, but it's where the Nebula Awards are given, which is like kind of industry awards. In the movie scene, it would be the equivalent of whatever that award is. Anyway, I was watching a panel. I was in a session, and the topic was, why is something to the effect of, why is trad publishing better than self-publishing? And this was about 6-7 years ago, when self-publishing was just starting to get some street cred. Like at the beginning, when self-publishing first became a thing, a lot of garbage went, people would just write their first draft, they'd post it, and they'd be done with it, right? And you were like, this feels really first drafty, and there's like 300 typos in it because, it's their first draft. But now, people are treating it a little more seriously, and the books are a lot better, right? But back then, it was still at the cusp of people starting to really take it seriously, or authors taking it seriously and getting some good quality books out there. But it was still like frowned upon, right? So all these big wigs from the different publishing houses and editors and acquiring editors are sitting up on the panel. There's like 5 of them, and they're like, and they're talking about how, of course, traditional publishers have a clearing. It's a clearing process. There's a slush pile, and then, we weed out the bad ones, we keep the good ones. And then there's the editorial process, and everything is edited just well and proofread, and it's quality standards. When you got our imprint on it, that it's a quality book. And they're like, okay, so how many in the audience, there may be 100 people in the audience, how many of you are self-published? So all these hands go up, like half the room, right? Okay, and they're like, okay, how many have you sold any books? A few more hands go up. He picks one. He said, how many have you sold? The guy stands up. He goes, 30,000. And everyone on the panel on the stage just went like ashen white, shocked, like, because they were trying to make the point, you'll sell 7 to like your cousins and your husband, that'll be but no, 30,000, which for a midlist book is like screaming. That guy would have had a contract in a second. In fact, he was approached by Random House after that con, because I know him now. His name is J.L. Doty. He just got cut from the first round of Spiffo, by the way. I told him about Spiffo. But his sci-fi series, I guess, sell a lot. He's got a lot of sci-fi out. So anyway, that was funny. I was just like, yes.
I think it's just very indicative of the short-sightedness of that, the traditional publishing world. I remember when Kindle came about, even they were marking up, their traditional publishers were marking the price of their Kindle books higher than their paperback books in an effort to try to maintain the paperback market. Right, because they were still under that kind of, right, delusion of the change, that they could stop the change from happening.
Right. And now they're trying to stop the change from happening to self-publishing. But I think they've given in, because have you noticed that they kind of like lurk around the Spiffo contest and offer people, a few people have gotten contracts, trad publishing deals from who are Spiffo, finalists or whatever. So now that, like, that contest, for example, is another clearinghouse function, the filter through the slush pile, that the agents normally do, because they're like, oh, you have to have an agent because, or a slush pile, or Spiffo. Hey, if it makes it through Spiffo, it's probably pretty good, Let's have a look.
Andrew asked, I don't know, about 25 minutes ago, how's book 3 going?
Yeah, I told you I can talk. So yeah, I am working on book 3 of the dark science fantasy that was I live when I was talking about the trigger warnings of that book, of that series? So
Yeah, my memory's not that good.
yeah, so Andrew, was I
Spent
live
30
when I talked
minutes.
about the trigger warning? If you're still here. Yeah, so I was telling Mike before we started, he was like that he had just read Darktown, and that's the only book, right? And all my books are very different voice, very genre specific. Heliotrope is very kind of standard epic fantasy, and Star Children Saga, which is here, I'll show you. Here's Darktown.
Yeah.
That's the lit RPG that he read, that Mike read. Here's Heliotrope, that's standalone. And this is the science fantasy. It looks YA because the cover, but it's not. And I was just saying, like, I won't let parents buy teenagers this book when I sell at cons, because there's a lot of trigger warning content. It gets very dark, brutal. Even in book 1, there's some brutality. People are like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And then by book 2, it gets into like sexual assault and substance abuse. And book 1 deals a lot with PTSD, and more PTSD in book 2, and violence. But like guttural, not like the kind of violence in like epic fantasy where it's like sword fighting, where like, oh yeah, that was like in the past. Nobody fights with lances and maces anymore. So, in monster hunting, so it's very like distant from your real life. So right. The gore and the blood and the gore and the violence sort of, it's just a story. But this series, the science fantasy series, is near future in 2080, and it takes place on the moon. It starts on Earth, a dystopian Earth that gets invaded by humanoid aliens who turn out to be our cousins. And one of the free places still is the moon. So there's a moon colony. So it's very kind of current, and it's just much more hit you in the gut. So I warn people about it. Some people love it. Like, anyway, so book 3. How am I doing book 3? I'm about 140,000 words in. It's probably about 90% done. I just reread part 1. It's pretty solid. I'm still tweaking part 2. It's almost done. Part 3 is like half done. So, because I do my long books in 3 parts usually. Yep. So, it's a project, but part 1 is good. I like part 1. The other part 2 is like still kind of messy, and part 3 isn't done. So, but hopefully I'm pulling all the strings together. Of course, it's the end of a trilogy. It's going to be a multi-book series with different arcs. So this is the first moon arc, and then there'll be other arcs, because there's the short arc, and then there's the long arc. The long arc is we're all these humanoid races who are populating Earth and other planets are all descended from the same ancestors who are on a lost planet across the galaxy, and we have to reconnect with them every 1,000 years in order to like keep our light bodies, our genetic material activated, basically to keep us from descending into a permanent dark age. Like, we need kind of their life force to keep us kind of more than just animals. Like, what differentiates a human from an animal? What is it about a human that has consciousness and can plan and dream and make tools and all that stuff? Like, what separates us? So to keep our humanity, basically, we need to reconnect with our ancestors, and there's these twin star children, just twins, who are the ones who have to open up the pathways of light to find this planet. So it's a mix of science fiction because it's extraterrestrial, and aliens, not like lizard aliens, but human Steve and you guys, the lizard people, not lizard aliens, but humanoid aliens, our cousins. And it's an origin story. Where did we come from? Why are we like we are? There's tribal warfares and stuff like that. And so these twins have to open up the pathways of light. So that brings in magic. Like, like there is faster than light travel in the book, but this traveling between the planets has been going on for like hundreds of thousands of years, and it's been done through magic, basically. So these kids who are descended from shamans in California, Mount Shasta, if you know California, it's like a woo-woo new age place where all the people with crystals and incense live. And there's crystals, there's like sentient crystals. It's this crazy mashup of science fiction, dystopia, military sci-fi, crystal magic. There's no dragons yet. It's a crazy book. I don't know. It's a book I've been working on for like over 10 years. It's sort of my project, but I love it.
So Palmer, when you sit down to start a new project, what's your process going in? Do you kind of try to purposely map out 3 giant books, or do you just say, well, kind of here's my going in idea, let's just roll with it for a bit and see what happens?
Unlike fantasy fans love fat books, I'm going to make a fat book. No, I don't think that way. No, so the Star Children saga just came. I just have some people say they have a hard time writing long books because they have to think of enough material. My problem is how to manage my excess of ideas and to keep the creativity in check so that it can actually form a coherent story. So my problem is stopping, not starting. So I started writing the Star Children saga, and it was just going on, and I was always already on book 5. I had like hundreds of thousands of words, and all these, because I was pantsing it completely. So all these random characters would show up that I hadn't planned, and these new magic systems. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Let's explore that. And finally, I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm never going to be able to publish this if I don't stop. So I stopped cold turkey in the middle of book 5. And right in the middle of like this really cool stuff was about to happen. I was just like, no, stop it, Barbara. You're crazy. I'm calling myself by my real name. Sorry, Palmer.
Well, you were mad, so I get that.
Barbara.
Start using your whole name. Barbara Palmer Pickering.
That's
right. Oh, shit. All 3 names. I've done it now.
So I stopped and I went through the like torturous editing process of getting dev editors and basically learning the craft. I learned the craft on Moondies. I rewrote that book so many freaking times. I completely rewrote it from scratch, blank paper, not editing, like blank paper, start over. And I aged up the characters from 13 and 15 to 20-year-old twins because I didn't want it to be slotted in YA. Because why? I wanted to deal with all these heavy topics that I warn people about. And now I'm like, why did I do all these heavy topics? Like, some people hate it. Like, I don't like to read heavy books like that. And some people, it's just very like, and very intense. So I'm like, what did I sign? Like, why am I doing this to myself? But in another sense, it's captivating. I mean, I don't know. I don't think anyone on this call has read Light Fighters yet. Chris, the fictional escapist, just finished it. Well, like 2 months ago. Yeah, it's a pretty intense book. People really like it. If you don't like slam it shut and throw it in the trash, it's like either a 1 star or a 4 or a 5 star. It's like nothing in between.
So Palmer, I have got a reputation now because I tell people that I won't read books that are over 500 pages long because that just means the book needs an editing job.
Dude, that's not a reputation. That's what you freaking tell people.
So you didn't read any George R.R. Martin books. You didn't read like the Harry Potter series. You didn't read Lord of the Rings. Mike, have you read Lord of the Rings?
He's waiting for George R.R. Martin to finish the last one because he doesn't like to get partway through a series and not be able to finish it.
No, I used to read the really long books. I absolutely hate George R.R. Martin's work. I can't stand it. I don't know why people like him. I read it. You read 50 pages about a despicable character who I don't like, and then it goes to another 50 pages about another character who I don't like and I don't care about, and it's a soap opera and fantasy. I absolutely hate it. And I'm just mystified that all these people are like, well, George R.R. Martin. I'm like, he's a hack.
To remind me to tell you the George R.R. Martin World Plan story. So yeah, what about Robin Hobb?
I read the first 3 Robin Hobb books. They're okay. They're a little slow for me.
Yeah, then you probably won't like Heliotrope because it's really modeled after like Robin Hobb and Robert Jordan. Do you hate Wheel of Time too?
I never started that even back when I was reading thicker books. I was like, how many of these are there? They never stop. So I was no, that's too much of a commitment.
Yeah. So the thing about Heliotrope is it's a standalone. It's in 3 parts. So you could really, it's in 3 locations. So you could really like read one part. The first part's like 180 pages. And then if you want to continue, you could read the second part. Then you could read a few other books. But it is slow and descriptive. The pacing is slow. I discuss, you know exactly what they're wearing and what they're eating and what the terrain looks like and what the castle looked like and what tapestry, what's the pattern of the tapestry on the wall. So if you hate that kind of stuff, don't even bother. Darktown is much faster. It's all just plot beats, a little bit of atmosphere thrown in, a little bit of descriptions here and there, and the illustrations. But no, Heliotrope is a slow burn, descriptive, Robin Hobb style, Robert Jordan style. They drink tea. I did the tea on purpose because of. Actually, they drink ale. They drink tea in Moondeeds, which was a Robert Jordan thing because his character's always drinking tea.
So how long is Moondeeds?
600.
I might be able to give that a try. Now, the Tim McKay here is going to be upset, but he's also tried to pitch me that his book is actually 3 separate books. It's 720 pages, but it's 3 separate books. So, I mean, maybe.
Or you can just wait for The Swamp, which is book 2 of Darktown. But that's going to be 50% more than Darktown, probably.
Well, I do audiobooks, and I don't have to worry about the length so much. So
Heliotrope is on audiobook.
I may have it. I'll have to check. I have so many audiobooks, like I have 1,300, I think. And don't ask me how many I've actually listened to because I don't want to mention that number. It's very small.
So how long are your books, Mr.?
I've published 5 books now, and 4 of them are between 100 and 103,000 words.
Okay.
And then the one is a novella collection, so it's only like 70.
And Ro, are you a writer?
Technically, I suppose.
Do you have books out?
Yeah. My first one was like $120, and the next 5 were in the 95 range. And
fantasy?
Yeah. The last 3 are in the mid 60s on purpose.
What's your author's name?
Rosaire Bushy. Rosaire. Here, I'll write it down.
Okay.
It's a guy's name, I swear.
Where are you writing it?
It's in the chat. Here.
Okay.
There you go.
Let's see.
So, Palmer, has there ever been a point in your writing journey with books where you just kind of thought, you know what? Screw it. This sucks. I'm done. I mean, I think that probably happens for most people, right? But when you're putting out hundreds of thousands of words like that, have you ever just kind of sat back, pushed yourself back from the desk and said, screw it?
No, I actually have never done that, to be honest. I do get really, really sick of the editing process because you'll have to send me a link to your book because I can't find it. Amazon doesn't know who you are, or I spelled your last name wrong. No, that hasn't happened to me. So yeah, I was saying the editing process. So I'm kind of a perfectionist. I used to be a proofreader for 2 years, like full time, 8 hours a day for like nonfiction. So I like really hate typos. Well, just being an avid reader, I hate typos. So my books get edited or gone through by proofreaders and copy editors multiple times. And then they still these freaking demon little typos still slip through. I don't know what they like appear like just to get me, So I get sick. It's like, I'll read through my books maybe 5 to 10 times. Well, it's getting less because my craft is getting better. Moondeeds, I probably read 20 times. Heliotrope, I probably read like 10. I just get sick of it. I hate that part, that repetitive part. But then I get sad when it's my last time through. I'm about to publish. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to read you again, probably until I listen to the audiobook. And then I cry. But no, I love to write. Like it's sort of what keeps me sane. Because I have a very like kind of compulsive personality, like addictive compulsive personality. I'll just get bad behaviors if I don't channel my energy in a productive way. So it's kind of my therapy, so no, I love to write, and I would write, I think even if I never published, just because I like the process. So it's just something I love to do. The craft itself, I love the craft. So, yeah.
So do you have any books that you've written that you have not published?
I have one. My first book, my first completed book, and people who've watched interviews of me before have probably heard this. This is where the hockey in Russia story came from, if Andrew's still on. So my first book was historical fiction, basically. You guys are old enough. What states do you live in?
Virginia, both of us.
Okay. So if you were from the northern states, you would probably have grown up playing hockey, right? So
Not
hockey,
well.
or watching, being a hockey fan. And now, hockey's in Florida, so go figure. Ice, I don't know.
That's just wrong.
Before the Berlin Wall fell, so it's historical fiction about hockey in Russia. So right when the Soviet Union was kind of on rocky ground before the wall fell, they had the Olympics, and there's that big thing where the Russians won against us. It was this huge deal. And I think it was in the United States, the Olympics, and at least one, if not two, of the Russian hockey players defected in the United States. Yeah. Right. Who was the first? Anyway, so that started this kind of political thing going on with hockey. Right. And then after the wall fell, Russia plunged into very bad poverty. And the sports programs weren't being funded like they were. And so they started basically selling hockey players to the NHL.
Yeah.
Right. Alexander McGillney, Pavel Bure. Those were the two who I was like in love with. I had massive crushes on Pavel Bure. And they were basically, they like the teams, whether it's the Red Wings or whatever, they would pay the Russian Hockey Federation like $1 million for these players, which $1 million is like enormous sum in Russia at that time. So they're basically selling these players. And then the Russian mob would come over and extort them. So Alexander McGillney was being extorted by the Russian mob when he was living in the United States playing for the NHL for him to give them money. Because now Alexander McGillney is free from Russia, but he's still making an NHL level salary. So he's making who knows how much, $1 million or whatever a year is salary. So the Russian mob is like, hey man, we brought you up, we trained you, we're Russian, give us some of your salary. And he's like, hell no. Took him to court, blah, blah, blah. So that was a model. So basically one of my characters was a Russian hockey player who got sold and then got extorted from the United States. And then it was a love story. The woman was a Canadian hockey player, because at the same time, so this was the 80s, late 80s, 90s when all this was happening. And at that time, it was illegal for women to play in official hockey leagues in Canada, and they weren't allowed to play in the Olympics. And in the Northeast of the United States, were a lot of women hockey teams, and like the prep schools and stuff had women's hockey. So there was this whole effort to get Canada women's leagues official and legal, and to get on the Olympics. And so the female character, but it was really about the extortion and the mob and all that, because I like dark themes, as you can kind of tell from my other books. So yeah, it was a good book. It was a good story, but I reread it like about 4 years ago, and it's crap. I mean, the writing is so bad. I'm like, oh my God, I would have to totally redo this from scratch. But the Russian hockey part, so I'm not going to do anything with it. It would make a good movie. I mean, if anyone wants to write a script, but it's kind of past its time. Like at the time, if it come out when all this shit was going down, it could have been interesting, but I kind of missed the timing, I think. But I was like, I'm a very much of an experiential writer. It's like, I have a huge collection of swords, for example, because I write about swords fighting. I'm like, oh, a sword. What does it look like? How does it feel? What is the shagreen handle? I must get me one, And I wear costumes sometimes when I write. I'm a weird, eccentric person, right? Normally I wear hats to these interviews, because I got to wear my weird clothes sometimes.
Yeah, we saw on the picture Mike used, you were wearing some steampunk top hat.
Yeah. I have a bunch of stuff. So I wear them to the conventions because otherwise they sit in my closet and rot. Right. Anyway, so I'm like, well, if I'm going to write about hockey, I actually have to play hockey. I have to know what I'm talking about. So I started playing hockey. I joined a women's league, and I lived in Seattle, which was a Canadian league. And I would go up to Canada and play tournaments in women's hockey in Canada and stuff. And then I was like, well, but I also have to know about Russia. So the wall had come down. Russia was open. There was a small sliver of maybe 5 or 10 years when Russia was welcoming to Westerners. You know, we didn't hate them anymore. We were all trying to be friends. This was in the 90s. And I read that I collected all these hockey magazines for research. And in the back, there's this ad: come play with, the Russian, come to the Russian hockey camp, where the Olympic team practices. So I'm like, okay, hell yeah. So I applied. And of course they were expecting men, because what the hell is a woman like playing hockey? Like, they do figure skate. In Russia, they're figure skaters, right? Men play hockey. So, but they were all poor, right? Like I was telling you. So they're like, they smelled money. So they're like, yeah, okay, we'll sponsor you. So yeah, come on over. But you're not going to play with the men. We'll set you up with the women. I'm like, okay, whatever. Because I was a little scared, because I wasn't very good at hockey. Like, I've been playing a couple of years, but I wasn't very good. Compared to the Russian junior leagues, they're like amazing, right? So anyway, I was a little relieved. But so the Russian Hockey Federation sponsors me, gave me a visa. The KGB team put me up. The first week I was sponsored by the KGB team, which is now the FSB. I got picked up from the airport in one of those black SUVs with the black windows, like all the like diplomats drive. Yeah. And then the second week, they put me up in the housing. So they were in the process of training a women's team to try to get into the Olympics. So by that time, women's hockey was an official Olympic sport. It had the previous Olympic a couple of years before, or a year before, was the first time women could play hockey in the Olympics. There were like 6 teams. It was like the US, Canada, Norway or something, a few others, but Russia was not one of them. Neither was China. So they're all competing for I think they were opening like 2 to 4 more slots. So they're all competing to get in the Olympics. So they're building this women's team in Moscow. And so they had me the second week, they had me practice with them, like on the ice, literally doing drills with the Olympic, like hockey team, right? Me. So the coach, well, they all wanted to know. They all spoke Russian. I spoke like 3 words of Russian, but anyway, he would make me do the drills, and then he would like laugh hysterically. I would miss the passes. I would fall, he was sitting over there, like his purple nose from being like drinking too much vodka, just laughing at me. Right. And all the women were laughing too. And I was laughing because it was funny, because it was ridiculous. Like, what am I doing playing with these people? Right. And they put me up in one of their identical white apartment buildings in the outskirts, which, if you know anything about Russia, like they all built them to those same state standards, communist standards. And all the women who were brought in from the provinces who weren't from Moscow lived in this building. And I was given an apartment, and it was December. It was freaking 20 degrees below zero. It was insanely cold and miserable and dark, and everyone was poor. The city was dirty. They didn't know what is the thing that cleans the air in our cars? Not carburetor, but the thing in the tailpipe where you remember when we grew up, it'd be like lead, like fumes.
Catalytic converter.
Catalytic converters. They didn't have those. So it was still like when I was a kid breathing all this stuff, and everybody smoked cigarettes in the cars. And it was just like, and I took the subway, and I was like, I hate it here. There were cockroaches in my apartment. It was just like, I was miserable, but it was super interesting. Anyway, so that's the Russian hockey story for that book. But then I said, I don't want to edit this thing. Back then when I finished it, I'm like, it's too much work to edit it and get it to publishing. So then I said, well, the next book, it has to be something I really love enough to like read it 10 times. So it has to be fantasy or science fiction, because that's what I like to read. So that's how Moondies came about. And Moondies came about, and I'll stop blabbing in a second because I don't know how long we're going. And I told you I can talk. I haven't even taken a breath. The idea for Moondies was my brother gave us all a gag gift on Christmas. And they were deeds to land on the moon. Like legit deeds. Well, they said they were legit. right?
Right.
Sure,
It's like
right.
there's like a constitution, and you get your coordinates with a map, the ones you own, where you own, and your mining rights and all this stuff. And so me, with my curiosity and imagination, I'm like, what if these, like, because they're like claiming, in fact, they're still claiming that no one has claimed land on extraterrestrial bodies. So therefore, it must be free for anyone to take. So they've claimed it. They said, we own this and we're giving it out and we're selling parcels, right? So I'm like, well, what if these actually are legit deeds? Like, what if it turns out, like, in 30, 50, 100 years, when we colonize the moon, by Steve, that these deeds actually, like, I actually own land on the moon. What if they're really, what if they would be really, really important for, like, my descendants, like when I pass them down, like what could they possibly be worth and be good for? So that's how the moon needs started.
That's an interesting premise. Have you ever got interested in something that you had to pull back from because you thought to yourself, I can't do this because it would require 2 years of my life going out and learning some damn new dangerous thing that'll probably get me killed?
Well, I'm not going to be like doing the Russian hockey thing adventure anytime soon. So yeah. And people are like, oh, don't you want to go to the moon? Because now they're selling, seats on ships to the moon, as if I could afford that. And I'm like, no, actually, I don't.
Sell a few more books.
because it sounds absolutely miserable. I mean, there's no air.
It really does.
There's no air pressure. There's no water. Well, there is water, ice. Anyway, so I don't know. I've calmed down a lot, Ro. I think I like to sit in my comfy chair with my heat and my computer and travel in my head.
Well, I have something for you. So
Right.
You could learn to be a tattoo artist, because if we can get to 500 subscribers by the end of the year, Mike's going to get a tattoo on his head.
No, you are not.
Yes.
Where on your head?
I'll show you a picture here. He's pulling it up.
Now. Share screen, window.
He was pretty sure we won't get to 500. That's why he said he'd do it. It's a little dude with it.
I like it.
So I saw a person with a similar hairstyle to mine, barely there. Had a guy with a lawnmower, and I was like, well, I write fantasy, so let's do a scythe. And if we get to 750, I'll have goats on the other side, like nibbling on the hair.
Whoa. I think you should make it be like 1,000.
The idea that we're going to get to 750 is iffy. So,
How many are you at now?
316, 315, something like that.
Something like that.
It's going to happen. You're going to have that tattoo, dude.
And
are you ready?
What's that?
Are you ready for it? Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
Because it's going to happen.
Oh, I'm more than happy to have it done. And we interviewed Adrian Gibson. His name all of a sudden just ran out of my head. Mushroom Blues author. And he's like, well, I'm a tattoo artist. Are you going to Seattle? I'll give it to you. So, I mean, I'm like, so I have to go to WorldCon, and if I have that, I'll do the goats. Have him do the goats on the other side or something. But awesome. I told my boss this, and he's like, "You're not really going to do that, are you?" I'm like, "Oh yes." They're like, you won't be able to see customers anymore, right? And I'm like, I won't have to travel for work. Great.
You could shave your head and put it where the hair is and let it grow out, and then shave it for special events.
I want to antagonize my boss. He's very young, and he deserves to be antagonized.
But he might fire you.
I'm old. So yes, I keep saying Rose should join me and get a tattoo, but he will not commit to that. He also has a wife who might have something to say about that.
Yeah, if I was to get a tattoo on this inkless body, it would not be on my freaking head.
Well, he's already got a tattoo artist, so I'm off the hook on that one. That's good.
Are you also a tattoo artist?
No.
No, I'm saying if she wanted to learn something, it was just a segue into telling people to go like and subscribe.
So
that was my effort, Mike. Come on, thanks for ruining it, man.
Where are you guys from in Virginia?
Mike's out of Richmond. I'm in Blacksburg. I'm not from Virginia. I'm actually from Vermont.
Yeah, my daughter lives in Roanoke, and my sister-in-law works at the Blacksburg, Virginia Tech or whatever that is there.
Oh, right, yeah. Where's she work there?
She does like grant writing for the science department.
The College of Science? Yeah, I used to work there.
Really?
Nice. What's her name?
Laura. I'll text her her name.
All right.
Oh, and
Yeah.
Palmer,
Are you on? I need to get you on Twitter. I don't know who you are on Twitter. Can you ping me?
Robushi. Yep, I'll put it on here.
There. Oh, I see in the background. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And my nephew went to William and Mary, and he's back in that area now. I think he's in the Richmond area now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we boring everyone in the show? Do they have questions? Is anyone left?
I think they are thrilled that it's somebody else talking other than Mike and I, actually. I've been kind of reading through these, and there's been lots of great comments about, it's like, oh, but Mike and Ro actually got somebody interesting that was really carrying this whole weight of this thing tonight. And I should stop and back up a little bit, because I just put my foot in it. They did not say someone interesting like nobody else we've ever had has been interesting. That's not what they said.
Thank you, Isaac.
And E.L.
Montague. Yes, I was reading through your earlier one.
Every show he gets banned around the middle part of the show
About
because
30-minute mark. Yep.
Oh, is he talking trash too much?
No, he makes too many comments, and YouTube bans him because they figure he's a bot. But we've actually interviewed him, so
we've met him, and we're still not sure he's not. So
that's too bad. Hey, Bo. Hey, Bo's DMing me a link to your books. Cool. And this is the book. Let's see. I'm reading this book. I'm reading this book, and I'm reading this book. Let's talk about. Hey, Mike, you definitely have to read Jenny Wurz's books. It'll cure you of your slow burn fat book allergy. Either that or you'll just
make
like
your head explode,
and you'll never touch it again.
I read the Daughter of the Empire trilogy that she wrote with Raymond E. Feist, and they're like up there, top 10 all-time books. At least when I read them, it's been 30 years now since I've read them, but still love them.
I'm really enjoying the Wars of Light and Shadow. The first book was rough for me because the prose is like it's like you're in a PhD class in Middle English or something. It was rough, but I'm totally used to it now, and it has this kind of vibe that's very unique. So Isaac's question. So for science techie stuff, I just thank God for the internet, because when I first started writing, the internet wasn't a thing, and I would have to get hockey books from Canada and stuff, have libraries send me stuff because the internet wasn't a thing. So I did extensive research on the moon. I do have some books on moon soil. And there's a lot of information about the moon out there, because of the Apollo trips and stuff. And they have soil samples, because a lot of the techie guy, one of the main point of view characters who's not the twins, is an inventor in Moon Deeds. His name is Ridge, and he's invented all this thing where an oxygenator where you can get oxygen from moon soil, which is a thing. There's ice in the craters and the poles, which is a thing, in which it's in the news. All this stuff is getting hit in the news now. People are actually going to try to actually set up little things they've already done ice samples and proved it, but somebody else is going to do it again at the South Pole. So I just did a ton of research. The only thing, and everything is really scientifically accurate or as best as I think it is for the moon. The thing that really drove me crazy, I'm directionally challenged, and I went through this horrendous mind game of trying to understand the phases of Earth from the moon. So, because it's a mirror image pretty much, right? But not just, because the moon also rotates the Earth as the Earth rotates the sun. So I wrote dates, and I looked up, there's this cool tool on the internet. You can check what is the phase of the moon in, June 2nd, 2090, and it'll tell you. And then I would try to extrapolate what the phase of Earth would be from the position of the moon from where it was. And I drew so many pictures, and it just broke my brain, actually. And the first book, I tried to be really specific about shadows and directions, because half the moon also is dark half the month, and light half the month. They have like 12, their month is like 28.9 days or something. So something like that, or 29 days, 0.8, I don't know. And so it's half and half dark, half light. And the dark side of the moon is a Pink Floyd song. It's not a real thing. There's the near side and there's the far side, but all of it is half dark, half light, except at the poles, at some ridges, which the colony is built on a crater rim in the North Pole called Peary Rim, which is the peaks of eternal light, which is a real thing. The sun never sets, sort of like the Arctic Circle, where the sun just kind of goes around the horizon all the time, or at least in the summer. Yeah, it's the same effect there. So they have solar power. I studied solar power, my solar installation thing on my resume. They have a type of solar dish where you can follow the sun. So yeah, I did research. The only thing that is sketchy is the faster than light travel, and it is based on two theories, which I've written the names down because I always forget, because there's two guys' names that I can never remember. One has to do, of course, with wormholes. Another has to do with focus crystals, which I'm like, yes, that is so fantasy. I'm going to use that. So my faster than light travel is possibly a real thing if we can ever figure it out. But that's the only thing where I kind of fudged. And the rest is magic. So people who really just love hard science fiction, some people have a hard time with science fantasy, because if you're into hard science fiction, you want everything to be factually accurate, and it's kind of all about the tech. And then you start throwing magic, and you're like, oh, you're cheating. This is so obnoxious. Yuck. And they'll stop reading, right? So it's kind of a fine balance to walk. Mm. So I set it up like magic is more powerful than technology. So it's kind of a battle between the aliens who have higher tech than us, and the shamans who have to, utilize their shaman skills to defeat these creeps.
So I published my first sci-fi novel 6 weeks ago.
Really?
The Haley Traveler.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, those went fast at Worldcon. Awesome. Those are popular, man.
I know. I watched
sci-fi. Most of the books there were fantasy, so the 5 sci-fi ones went fast. And
the thing that I realized was the sci-fi, the world building is hard, because mine is set on Mars and Earth has fallen in catastrophe. I'm like, okay, well, everything has to be locally sourced. They have no rubber. They have no petroleum, so they have no plastics. They have a ton of metal, but yeah, how do you, any sort of flexible joint? I'm like, how do they do that? And I finally had to say they have algae vats that can produce, hydrocarbons. And I'm like, I'm going to have an entire city tour algae vats just to try to explain away.
My dome has algae vats, but for oxygen production. So see?
Yep. So, but I mean, it's just so you're like, oh wait, no, they wouldn't have that. Now, what do? They only have glass and metal. Those are the only two substances they have. I'm like, oh my God, this is so much harder.
It is so hard.
Magic, it's there.
It makes fantasy so easy, because I'm always paranoid of making a mistake, and some real scientist is going to read it and go, oh no. And I have had that happen, even in fantasy. Like I have this maritime scene in Moon Deeds that Jenny Wirtz read, and Jenny Wirtz is lived on a sailboat and stuff. And I'm like, Jenny, how'd I do on the boat scenes? She's like, oh, you got this wrong and that wrong. She listed off all these things that would have been real. I'm like, oh my God, I should have known you before I published it. So you can't win in sword fighting. I don't know. It's hard to be realistic, but yeah, it is tough. I think that's why they say write what you know. For science fiction, if you grew up in that industry and you really know what you're talking about, it's like if you're a doctor or something, then yeah, it would be easy to get the facts right. But if you're not, and nobody's an expert on Mars, nobody knows, really.
So my background, I'm a chemist. So I'm writing book 2 now for Haley Traveler and writing what I know. So do you want to know all about recycling systems? Oh boy, can I tell you the chemical react? I'm like, no, and I like astronomy, so they like go past Jupiter. I'm like, oh, let me throw out my knowledge of Jupiter astronomy fact. I'm like, oh my god, no one is going to read this. No one. Oh my god.
Bunch of random facts.
People are gonna love it. People are gonna love it.
So yeah, if
But
you like,
you're going to find people though who are all. I mean, even in straight fantasy, somebody wrote a review of mine. It's like, this is not realistic. You know, chapter 1, something's not real. It's like, yeah, no shit, man. There's like magic and dragons and stuff. It's not, a lot of it's not realistic. Get over it.
I know exactly. I'm like,
You
that's
know.
why they call it fantasy. Yeah.
So,
All about conflict. That sounds fascinating.
all of that good hard science stuff and research and everything, and I'm going to lower the tone immensely here. Favorite Star Trek captain?
oh no,
Who is it? No, this is you can't be wrong. It's your favorite.
You're asking me? Yeah.
I'm asking you.
No, I only know the classics. Like, I don't know the side series or the movies or even the odd captain who might have taken over from Captain Kirk, because he's the only one I know. So he's my favorite.
All right, fair enough then.
Sorry, I'm not a.
that's safe.
Quite all right.
Good.
I'm more of a Star Wars person there. That's the science fantasy. Although I did grow up on Star Trek and what was the one with the robot?
Lost in
Will.
Space.
Will, yeah, Lost in Space. I grew up on that too.
Oh, danger, Will Robbins, danger,
Yeah.
danger. Yes.
Yeah, that was good. I
Nice,
like that
Mike.
was a really
Excellent.
good one. And Twilight Zone, which got into the creepy, weird stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you subscribe to the Darth Jar Jar theory?
What is this theory about Jar Jar?
That Jar Jar Binks actually really isn't a moron. He's actually a Sith Lord.
That's a good one. I like that. Let me tell you about another job I had in high tech. So I work for HP, and which I probably shouldn't say, I try to keep it separate, but we build PCs. So we were building a Star Wars PC. We made a deal with Disney, who owned it, who had bought LucasArts. And I'm in software. So I was like, hey, and we did like art of the masks of, I don't know, some art from Star Wars. I can't remember what it was. And I said, okay, well, let's make fun stuff for the software. For example, let's make all the system Windows sounds. You know how you used to, when you got an email, it used to go boop, 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 right? Well, you can program those sounds. There's like 10 of them, notification sounds. I was like, so I got Disney, LucasArts, to give me their audio files. Let me listen through their audio files from the ranch. There's a thing called something ranch where they keep all their audio. So I made these
Skywalker
packs.
Ranch.
Yeah, Skywalker Ranch. So I made these packs of different sound notification sounds. One was the laser, whatever they're called.
Lightsaber.
The lightsabers. The lightsabers have, or boop, 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 and then I had droid sounds. I had an R2D2 pack. I had a C3PO pack. I had sounds of the different spacecraft or speedsters or whatever they call them. They had different sounds, right? So I had like 8 packs, but they also gave me access to their photo archive. So I made packs of preloaded. I spent, like, my job for like 4 months was to spend 8 hours a day combing through the photo archives from LucasArts, all the backstage photos, all the sketches that they did before they built everything, showing how, pictures of them making all the models of all the spaceships and everything. And I made photo packs of different ones. I did like a spaceship pack, and I did character packs. And I had like probably 8 of them, 8 or 10. And so I went through all the packs of the 3 newer movies, right, with the Jar Jar Binks, right, and everyone hated those movies so much, but I loved those movies, actually. I mean, except for the fact that the guy who did I'm really getting brain dead here. The young Darth Vader, he couldn't act.
Anakin. Yeah.
Yeah, Anakin. But aside from that, the little boy Anakin was great, but the 18-year-old Anakin, I just didn't think it was good. But everything else, I thought Jar Jar Binks was funny. I thought it was fine. So, but I saw all the photos from all that too. So yeah, but it would be more interesting if he was a Sith Lord, because he's kind of silly.
All I could think of is that by putting out sounds like that, connecting with email, I can just see so many people getting in trouble because like their notification sound for their spouse calling would be, "It's a trap," you know?
Yeah. Oh my God, I should have done voice samples like that. Oh man, I need to go back in the day. Yeah, that was a fun project.
Palmer, I don't know when this is going to end, but before I forget again, can you send me contact information for Ollie? Because I think we would love to have him on our show.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, if he's not busy, creating another language or whatever.
I'm sure he'd be thrilled.
And to remind everyone, because we have 50 people listening, and when I last said this, there was only like 5 of you here. If you see this in the grocery store, and yes, it says Oreo Coke, do not buy it. It's disgusting.
There aren't really 50 people here. Oreo, it sounds like a good idea. There's 5 people, not 50. So why is it disgusting? What is this? Oreo ice cream is good.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's just horrible. I love Coke Zero. I've never said no to an Oreo, but together they are gross.
Well, that's good to know.
They just really are. It's like,
one time when I took my nephew to LA, we went to Galco's Pop Stop, where you could actually make your own carbonated drink, and they had all the different flavors. And I made chocolate cola, and it was disgusting.
Oh, really?
So
yeah,
it could be that.
Something about chocolate and bubbles just doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so excited, and then I tried it, and I was so very disappointed.
Yeah.
Aww.
So I guess that's why you don't see carbonated chocolate products anywhere. So there you go. You've all learned something valuable.
But the old sundaes, where you'd get like chocolate. I mean, in the old days, back when I used to walk 5 miles to school in the snow, you could stop at the local pharmacy and at the soda bar, which we're gone by the time. I think that was a 1950s.
Oh, back at the malt shop.
Well, you can get a chocolate sodas. I've had them. They're not bad. So you just didn't do it right, man.
Well, that's probably true. I also was
a Coke float. To be fair, a Coke float is all right, but that's vanilla ice cream.
True.
Right?
Well,
it's not like.
What if you put chocolate ice cream in it? How would that be?
It'll probably suck. I mean, I don't know.
For science, you must try this out, Ro.
Next week, my wife will be gone to England. I'm having, yes, I'll give it a shot, just for y'all.
There you go.
We'll give it a go.
You won't get a tattoo on your head, but you will try this.
I will eat gross things. Yeah.
And I'm totally with John Douglas here.
Well, no, again, vanilla will be fine. We know that Coke floats and root beer floats are fine with vanilla ice cream. The question is it any good with chocolate ice cream? Because chocolate and cola, in this particular case, do not work well together.
So, not to bring up politics, and we don't have to say anything else, but the debate doesn't start until 40 minutes from now. So, we're not competing with.
We haven't missed it.
The biggest drag down fight that could possibly happen. It could be entertaining. Hopefully, it'll be entertaining. We'll see.
Herman, Hawaiian pizza is
pineapple and pizza is delicious.
It is. It's the best pizzas, Hawaiian pizza.
Yeah.
If you add jalapenos to it, oh my God, that is nirvana right there.
Oh, dude. I'm from Vermont, so my spice scale runs somewhere between like water and pudding.
And you married an English woman, so her spice
right.
is
So A little curry powder every now and then.
I grew up near. My mom grew up at the border of New York and Vermont, right where Lake Champlain meets Lake George.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up like up there in New York when I was a kid, a littler kid. So yeah, you know what, you like have winters and stuff there.
Indeed.
So now we have
That's
a
what-
new hot button topic. Hawaiian style
Jalapenos and
pizza.
pineapples. That sounds like a pretty good combination, actually.
Pineapple is okay, but for a lot of people, when you hit a certain age, about 40, pineapple will start to give you heartburn for no frickin' reason other than to mess with you.
I love pineapple and jalapenos. I made my own salsa, a pineapple salsa last weekend, so it was delicious. I highly recommend it.
Are these the topics that Bald and Balding usually discuss?
Usually nothing quite this esoteric, but you know.
You guys are fascinating.
That's one word for us.
I think it might take like a few beers and some pretzels to.
Oh, well, I do have a drink that I'm going to be making next week, actually.
Oh, really?
It's made with Jägermeister. It's a Darth Vader.
Oh,
I saw it somewhere and said, yes, I will have to try this and see how it goes because I kind of like Jägermeister. So we'll give it a go.
yeah. It's an
I do
interesting.
too, actually.
It's an interesting drug, basically.
Yeah.
What is the yeah? And then there's absinthe, which is like illegal because it. rots
Absinthe
your
is
brain.
freaking poison. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Jägermeister is like drinking Vicks Formula 44D cough syrup, you know, but with attitude.
Oh.
Yep.
All right. Palmer Pickering, thank you very much for wasting 80 minutes of your life talking to us morons. We appreciate it.
It's been fun. Thank you for letting me babble incessantly about random topics.
We love it when people talk. It's the more you all talk, the less we have to, and I think everybody is better for it.
Well, thank you so much. It's been fun.
Yep, thank you. And now it's time to wave awkwardly.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Appreciate your time.